Hey guys, welcome back and thanks for tuning in. You're listening to the Colored In podcast. I'm your host, Nai, that's NAI, because I'm neat and interesting. So today we're going to be tackling our first pillar, focusing on career and culture. For those who may be new to the series or not familiar with our themes, let me be the first to welcome you to the crew. Crew, CREW, is an acronym for the four themes this podcast focuses on. It stands for careers and cultures, relationships, education, and wellness. If you want to know a little bit more about the start of this podcast and the meaning behind these themes, be sure to check out season one. And of course, don't forget to connect with us on Instagram, like our post, share our episodes, and DM us your feedback at _colored_in. Alrighty, crew, welcome back. So, again, like I said, we are hitting our letter C today. When we know what that means, that's careers and cultures. And I usually separate the two, but today, actually, we're going to be blending both topics. We're going to be discussing the coronavirus impact on the film/media industry. I am also having another guest join us today as well in order to get some of his insight and input as an active worker within the film industry. I also conducted a quick survey amongst my network about how they feel about the film industry, how they feel about the coronavirus pandemic. So I'm excited to share those results with you all later. But first, true to the nature and spirit of this podcast, let's get into some background. So, some info on the COVID-19 pandemic. So, coronavirus or coronaviruses are a large family of viruses that can cause illness in animals or humans. In humans, there are several known coronaviruses that can cause respiratory infections. Those coronaviruses range from the common cold to more severe diseases such as severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS as better known, Middle East respiratory syndrome, or MERS, or the one that we're all know and fighting with, COVID-19. To date, as in November 2020, there have been a little over 9 million cases confirmed in the US and over 6 million cases confirmed worldwide. The virus was identified in Wuhan, China in December 2019 and has been confirmed to be spread from person to person through respiratory droplets. I'm sure we all know this already, but I'm just getting my facts straight and getting it out to you guys. So, as a result, many businesses, establishments, all of the whole gambit of just physical venues have been forced to shut down or enforce social distancing guidelines. There have been travel bans worldwide in effect, and quite frankly, sometimes it's just super nerve-wracking to leave your house. Like sometimes I don't even want to step outside because there's just so much general anxiety surrounding this disease, especially in New York, where I currently live. We're going to be entering the second wave soon, and there's already been rumors that it's going to be worse than the first. So it is a huge physical and emotional toll on everyone. The impact that this pandemic has had on the film industry has been incredibly interesting. Also, just to note, as an aside, I know COVID has had an impact on every industry, especially the healthcare industry. Shout out to our essential workers, everyone who's risking their lives on a day-to-day basis, whether they're nurses, firemen, policemen, Uber Eats delivery persons, DoorDash delivery persons, all of you guys, all of our essential workers, thank you so much for all that you do on a daily basis to help us combat this pandemic. But with that being said, I'm going to be exploring the impact of COVID-19 on those industries in other episodes. Today, I'm only going to be focusing on the film industry. One, because it's the one that I've always felt close to, that I have such a big passion for, that I've always pursued. So I feel like I can give more clear facts on it. And also, I would say it's the industry where we've seen the most tangible damaging effects because we see so many movie premieres and production and filming get pushed back, and theaters have yet to even reopen entirely. So I think those are like clear damaging effects that we can like very easily point to in terms of presenting this case. So let's start from the top. The movies in general are just a massive value creator. So global box office revenues totaled 42 billion last year, an all-time high. And it contributed to almost 1/3 of the estimated $136 billion in the value of worldwide movie production and distribution. Hollywood alone supports more than 2 million jobs and 400,000 American businesses. It has been said that British film and TV is actually worth about $60 million each day to the UK economy. So, all in all, we can see that they don't really play a small part when it comes to creating value within the economy, especially within the media industry. Also, what do we normally consume now more than ever throughout this entire pandemic? It's been film and television, especially anything that we've been streaming on all of the streaming services that have been provided to us. So, what coronavirus did to all of that was upend the content pipeline. It basically halted film productions and closed cinemas worldwide. Ooh, I got stuck on that one for a little bit. um, and granted, as cases declined, things started getting back into production. In fact, production has already restarted in some countries and in some cities like New York, for example. And the industry has adopted remote work protocols where possible. But the virus in and of itself just creates uncertainty. And the biggest short term risk seems to be us, which us meaning consumers, and our kind of decreasing, dwindling confidence in the content that keeps getting pushed back, or in the general fact of wanting to like exit our homes to go to the theaters. So, where does that leave us? Quite frankly, I didn't know. And so, as a result of that, I realized that I kind of needed a little bit more input outside of what I knew about the industry. So, I decided to call on my network to see what they were thinking. I sent a survey out to my friends and my friends' friends and my friends' friends' friends who all work in the film industry. I asked them questions related to the job opportunities within the pandemic and the educational resources that may have become available as a result of digitizing a lot of workshops. I asked them how things are changing on set, how the film industry could potentially be sustained on the virtual route, and their thoughts on the future, of course. I sent out the survey and got about 46 responses back, which to me is a decent amount considering I actually do not work in the film industry, but I am connected to it through my network. Out of the 46 survey responses I got, 12 people identified as directors, 28 people identified as actors or actresses, 3 people identified as film lovers, so they were bloggers or reviewers, etc., and 3 people identified as producers. When asked if COVID had a negative impact on their job opportunities, 20% deemed it to be positive, where 40% deemed it to be somewhat negative. When I asked them if they were optimistic about the film industry switching to the digital landscape, i.e., virtual film premieres, Zoom plays, etc., 60% said yes, while 30% said no, and 10% said neither, which I don't really know how to take that. When I asked for their overall sentiment about how they adapted to the virtual screening slash the switch to online or Zoom plays, I got feedback ranging from one survey response which stated, I've adapted to it the same way people adapt to going from a game system to the next. It's a flow, and you just simply go for it and don't let you stop moving forward. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, I've gotten the response stating, shooting has become non existent for me because some actors and crew members are not comfortable with being around people during these times. I had so much to shoot this year, now everything is on hold. But I use the time to enhance my writing, so when the time comes, it's game time. But this pandemic has placed on hold getting the experiences, enhancing the skills, and just enjoying the craft. That was very interesting. So we've definitely gotten a range of positivity, keep it moving, to a more like, but to a still more positive note, but also like accepting the realistic effects of what this pandemic has done, which is like literally stop everything at one point in time. For my last question, where I asked about the future of the film industry, I got feedback. I got a lot of feedback on that one. Like everyone responded to that one. But the few that I picked out, got feedback from one respondent saying, I think any performance, whether it's taped or live, benefits from being in the same room with other people. The energy is missing through a screen. I think the future is to basically make what I call away pods. So once people are involved in a project, they isolate together as a group. That would mean all cast, all crew, etc. Stay together for the duration of the production. Obviously, all testing has to be done prior isolation, but I think that's probably the only viable way. That's a really interesting way to go about it. He or she, because it was anonymous, is basically saying, listen, the only way for us to do this is to keep doing it the way that we know, but being a little bit more creative and start isolating together, which means we get negative COVID tests, we put people all together in an isolated room or neighborhood or um, general geographic location wherever the shooting is happening, and we stay there until that project is done. That could definitely be a more feasible way to get it done. I think that's kind of how things happen anyway, especially when people are shooting for large film. But they usually have freedom to like see their family, see their friends, in between like breaks or shooting breaks, where it seems like here in these away pods that's not going to be an option. Another survey respondent said, I just hope that we grow and evolve from the events this year so that the industry becomes new and approved. That's positive. I like to hear the positive sentiment around it. I like to hear that there is some optimism that people still have around the industry, and that really all this is just another opportunity for people to just keep being creative. And then finally, this was one of the last comments that I picked that I wanted to share with you guys when I asked them about the future of the film industry. This survey respondent said, personally, I don't think movies will stop being made or TV shows, but I do believe that movie theaters will forever be changed, and how we protect ourselves on set will be different now that some people have a fear of COVID. A fear that does make sense, but it shouldn't stop you from doing what you love. You just have to be smart with it. And that theaters should make deals with streaming services to stay alive. Know what I mean? Yes, I do. Survey responded, I absolutely get what you mean. There needs to be a way where we can all protect ourselves, but still kind of contribute to the craft that they love as actors, as directors, as producers, as screenwriters, as film critiques, as casting directors, all of the above, right? But on the flip side of that, on the B2B side, which is where my finance professional hat comes on, theaters also need a way to kind of safe keep or protect themselves within this virus. So as we all know, some theaters have opened up. Some theaters have even given ridiculous deals where, I don't know if you guys have heard, but in AMC, you can rent a room for $100 to watch a movie, and you can rent it for yourself, you can rent it for two people, you can rent it for up to 20 people, I think, and it's a whole theater to yourself for $100, without including tax, obviously. Mind blowing to think that something like that could ever even exist within our time period. I am going to be taking advantage of that deal, possibly if it doesn't shut down by the time I have the opportunity to. But it's a really cool experience. But that's just one way that theaters have had to become creative to stay afloat. And I think instead of fighting the giants, fighting the production companies, and being a little nasty with them about how they're distributing their movies and how they're having their virtual screenings, they should cut a deal and maybe figure out a way where they can host the movies for them in a way that, or in an environment that is safe and that can encourage consumers to come back out. Because again, with all the revenue that Hollywood movies have created, a lot of it was through box office revenue, and that's tickets being sold to go to the theaters to watch those movies. And a lot of that is going to be cut in half if all of the movie premieres are happening via streaming sites, because we already have a base price to pay. But we've seen examples where it's been successful with the Trolls movie on Disney Plus as well as Mulan. So I think theaters need to be creative about the conversation that they're having with our production and distribution companies. So overall, I think sending out that survey definitely gave me a clearer picture about how people are feeling about the industry. There's been a variety of responses, ranging from positive to negative, but overall, it kind of seemed very positive, very optimistic. And there seemed to be like a level of motivation to keep moving forward and make the best of the situation, which I think is something that we can all relate to, whether we're in the film industry or not. With that being said, I am not the only one having a chat with this topic today. As I already mentioned, I am inviting a guest onto our show today to talk about his experience within the industry and how it has changed or shifted. Before we get into that, it is time for our disclaimer. So, this interview was conducted via Zoom because we are still in a pandemic. I am preserving the safety of myself and my guests by social distancing and producing these episodes virtually. Now that that's out of the way, let's bring on our guest. All right, crew. So, our guest here today is Robert Barnes Jr. He is 26 years old and was born and raised in Harlem, New York, with a passion for acting. He began his career in 2013, where he attended the American Academy of Dramatic Arts for theatrical training. He then continued on his education at the New York Conservatory of Dramatic Arts for advanced studies. So, again, Robert, thank you for joining. We've been talking, and we being me and my crew, we've been talking about COVID-19 and the film industry for the past couple of minutes now. But before we get into that, I'd actually like to ask you a little bit more about how you are dealing slash adapting to this pandemic. I know you've gotten a little bit of good news on your win. So I just want to congratulate you on winning in the short film category in the Black LA Film Festival for The Blue Cave. So congrats on that. But besides that, nice little W you got, how are you doing in adjusting to the pandemic within your career?
In the beginning, it was tough. Everything that I had planned for the year kind of just got taken away. But overall, I kind of just took a moment to really recollect myself and really make a plan of what the next step is. And I'm doing fine now. I can say that I'm doing fine now.
All right, well, great. It's nice to hear that, you are definitely in a better place. I think a lot of people can kind of say that right now, where at the first it was a little bit tough, definitely rocky, and rough to adjust to, but over time we've like been able to kind of make the best of the situation, which honestly we don't have any choice but to do, right? We're 8 months into being quarantined, being like social distancing, working from home in my case. So it's kind of just what life is right now. It's that new normal that everyone's been talking about. So glad to hear that you're doing okay. I'd like to ask you a little bit more about how the pandemic has affected your job opportunities. Has it had any effect, and if so, would you say it was positive or negative?
I would say somewhat positive. The somewhat would be the negative uh, part with the job opportunities because obviously with COVID happening, you can't. My job, you have to be close in proximity with people. You have to be close, so everything just shut down. So that kind of like it just kind of messed me up. It's like, all right, I have all these things to move me forward in a way physically I can get to the next step, but the positive would be the business operations or business opportunities where the pandemic brought a wide source of resources like never before to free classes, cheaper classes, cheap career consultations, audition coaching, self-tape coaching, and networking. Where I go with networking is that a lot of casting directors, and I say one network channel, Freeform, were on social media posting, telling people who are actors, actresses that send in your resume, send in your material. We have monologues and scenes that you can work on, or you could just pick one yourself and you send them in, and you will be part of our database for the next shows that we're auditioning, next shows that we're developing, which was pretty cool. So it was more of a 50-50.
That sounds awesome. So you're saying, or at least it seems like you're saying, that while physically there were a couple of challenges that you had to deal with and that ultimately could have advanced your career, digitally, it seems like there were a lot more educational resources that you were able to use to advance yourself, from ranging from like career workshops to portfolio consultations to like even just like auditioning, it seems like, for like big networks. So that's actually really interesting to think about. Do you think that this is something that could not have happened without the pandemic?
I think for me, I would have got to that to where I was what I was doing during the pandemic later than sooner. I think the pandemic just rushed the process because I'm more of a person that will sit behind the computer, submit my stuff to audition for anything. If I don't get it, I don't get it. If I get it, then it's time to do the homework. Then I'm on the set physically doing it. I was never the type to really like. The only thing I would do, to be honest, would be just add a new gig that I did on my resume. And so that kind of the pandemic really put me in a place where, okay, you're doing okay with the physical part of acting. You need to really work on the business side. What are the directions that you need to go to get to the next level? Because you just doing these gigs and getting paid for it, it's not really going to do much, but be the same thing. You're going to be on the same kind of level. And I noticed that during the pandemic. So it was like, okay, I need help. I need someone to tell me I need someone to tell me what I'm doing wrong, what I need to add, what I need to be uncomfortable with to get to the next step. So yeah, so the pandemic really kind of pushed me to do those kind of things that I was kind of being lazy about doing.
That's funny because what it seems like to me, and this is where corporate America rears its ugly head, it sounds like the pandemic kind of gave you the opportunity to self manage yourself. When you talk about like building up the business acumen needed to kind of propel your career, it sounds like something a manager is supposed to do, or like an agent. But it seems like the pandemic kind of opened up this world of opportunity for you to do it yourself, and that there were more available resources for you to kind of learn how to do that adequately.
So just doing these things kind of put me in like a step forward so that if I do go to a manager and agent, I already have it on the table. Like I bring this to the table, I'm this type, let's see if it works. If it doesn't, let's start from the drawing board. But this time I have a team with me. I'm not doing it by myself anymore.
I like that. I do like that. I like the way that sounds. So I like how the pandemic, or at least for you personally, is a myriad a period of preparation, as opposed to like just like a dead zone. I know you mentioned that the pandemic has been somewhat positive for you. Have you been booked on any gigs? Have you been a part of any kind of virtual play, Zoom play, anything like that?
Yes, during the pandemic in the early, like say like the high rise, I say like June, July, I was doing table reads just to like freshen up the acting muscles. But recently around October, I auditioned for a virtual play of The Night Shift, which was released on Facebook. Um, I will say the virtual play area is it was weird. I'll be honest. It was weird because I'm used to being on the stage. I'm used to being in front of someone, like just feeding off of their energy and everything. And it was just like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm lagging. The internet's not working. People are making noise. I can't see you because it's looking all blurry and digitally. And it was just like, I'm very patient. I wasn't getting frustrated, but it was just like, I was kind of getting uncomfortable because this is a new thing. I was more uncomfortable than frustrated. I would say that. It was very uncomfortable, but I did like it because one, I'm still acting, and two, I'm meeting new people who are in the same position that I am too. They're getting used to it. Even the director and producer was kind of like trying to figure out. Like I was doing that, and I'm doing another reading with someone, and same thing, lagging, making noises in the back, and now I'm more prepared of it. So yeah, I'm more prepared for it now.
I get that. So I relate to that so much. And who would have thought? They always say like technology would rip us apart, but I don't think I've bonded with my peers or with my coworkers more than over technological difficulties, like the glitching, the oh wait, sorry, what'd you say? I cut you. Do you want to say that again? And it's just like, and we all get frustrated with it. We all experience it. And it's almost like a little bonding moment when like somebody's just like, sorry, like my Zoom just isn't working. We're just like, girl, been there, done that. Like we are absolutely sympathetic to those issues. So I love that. I love that it's I love that you've been able to acknowledge that it is something to be uncomfortable with, which I completely agree with. But it also could be a little bit of a bonding moment, as you said, when you're like meeting people who are in the same boat as you. So when it comes to being on set, what would you say are some of the common security measures that you've witnessed being implemented while on set or while during like the virtual plays that you've been a part of?
On set, I just literally came from set today, and the main things were that I saw was mask, of course, social distancing. So with that being said, after a take, the actor will stand outside and let the director talk to the crew to let them know what needs to be changed, what's the new lens, is lighting off, da da da. So they do that after they're done. This is for the set that I was on. I don't know how other sets are doing. This is for the set that I was on. And after they're done, I go back into the room and the director will talk to me, but he will be 6 feet away from me, which I thought was weird because it's like I'm so used to the director being like a close proximity because it's like it's not it's like the like I said the bonding connection and having that deep 5 second conversation about character development or why am I doing this, what's the objectives, everything. So it was just like I did feel like a little disconnect with that, but then also I had to adjust to it. Meals, if they're doing catering, is scheduled so that there's no wait. As in, what I mean is they order it an hour before. Usually, the sets I've been on, they order it right then and there because it's going to be a long break. We can't have long breaks. People can't be in the same area for too long. Or you bring your own food. Obviously, drinks. If you bring your own water bottle, you have to label it with your name. Have it with you all times. Do not just sit it anywhere. Traveling, let's say if you're traveling to the area to the location by public transportation, please wear a mask. Taxi, please wear a mask. If you're getting picked up by the people, there can only be 3 people, unless 3 people, including the driver, in the car that is driving to the location, and also wear a mask. Hand sanitizing stations. Temperature has to be taken. If you're over 100 and 100 and I think zero point 0.4 Fahrenheit, you have to leave. Not to be disrespectful, it sounded messed up, but you have to vacate the premises because you're putting lives in jeopardy. Obviously, you have to do a form before you go into set saying, did you come in contact with someone that had COVID? Have you left the state? If you did you do the 14 days, et cetera, et cetera. And also the most important part after the filming has officially wrapped, you have to do the 14 days. If you get the symptoms or you feel sick, you have to communicate with the director and producer so they can know what's going on, so they can know what they need to do for themselves and for the rest of the cast and crew. So that's what I noticed, and that's what I saw with the protocols that they're putting onto the sets now. And also, there's you have to some sets will ask for this, but I have it. There's a link. I'll give you the link. There's a link where you can get your certificate that you know the safety protocols of being on set now with COVID pandemic situation. So yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot more than I expected to hear, which is a great thing. I'm actually so happy that there are like real concrete precautions that are being taken place on set because obviously at the end of the day, all we want to do is preserve our own safety and other people's safety. So that's actually that was a longer list than I expected. So I'm really happy to hear that. It was interesting. You said that there is actually a course available. Is it kind of like a healthcare type of course related to the virus that people are taking, saying that they're knowledgeable about it?
Yes, so it will give you information that you have to look over. It will tell you like what's the do's and don'ts, what each department needs to do when it comes to makeup, makeup and wardrobe. They're usually the same thing. Lighting, crew, set building, the actors and directors, how they're supposed to move. It's like a assembly line. One comes in, goes out, other comes in, goes out, one comes in, goes out. It's a whole thing. And then after you read the information, you take a test. If you pass the test, you get your certificate.
All right, so our last but certainly not least question, I would love to know kind of your thoughts on the future of the film industry as the pandemic continues. Where do you see content creators, directors, actors, where do you see them going? How are you feeling positive about it? Just anything that you are feeling about how it's going to continue.
The film industry or entertainment industry has always been going towards the streaming platform. I think that's what the new thing was happening. Like I said before, the pandemic just kind of rushed it even more. Just using an example, last year, The Irishman, Netflix movie made, was in theaters for 26 days. And then on the 27th, it debuted it on Netflix. Now, I don't know the numbers of how many people saw it in theaters, but I know for a fact, having those big names in that one movie, people flocked to their little screens in their living rooms and watch that movie. So I think that's what's going to happen where big movies, because we already have seen the movies from like 2016 to now. It's nothing but big blockbusters. It's not a lot of like romantic comedies or comedy movies unless the name is big that's being played in the theater. So I think what's going to happen is the big blockbuster movies, for example, Avengers, God, 4, 6. Let's do 6. Avengers 6 comes on theaters for a limited run for 2 months. People who are comfortable going to the theater in the time of what? I'm just throwing by next year. If people are comfortable going to the theater, they will go. Social distancing is going to happen in those theaters, but they're going to go. People who are not comfortable with going to the theater have to wait, and they're going to do the same thing they did with Mulan and put it on Disney Plus and pay extra to do that. I think theaters, when it comes to plays and musicals, they're going to do the same thing. The plays and musicals are going to have a limited run. They're going to have a certain amount of people actually watching the show. But while people are watching the show, they're going to record the show itself. And then after the limited run, they'll put it on any streaming site. You just have to pay extra. I think that's where it's going to go. Or they're going to bring back, there's going to be a simple theory. They're just going to bring back drive-bys. Drive-in movie theaters. I think that's going to be the most simple thing. But I think the first theory is what's going to actually happen.
I was about to say drive-bys. I was like, no, thank you. I do not
Nah,
want
I didn't,
that.
not like that, guys. Not like that. My mistake.
No, we meant drive-in, guys. We meant drive-ins. No, yeah, I think that's a very viable way to think about it in terms of having limited time show runs and then moving it on to like a digital platform. So I actually sent out surveys to like my network who of people who work in the film industry. You were definitely a big part of that. So again, thank you for distributing that survey link. And someone said something that I actually was really intrigued by, and that was having away pods. So it's kind of this concept of having everyone who is slated to work on a movie, cast and crew, and having them all tested for corona before they go on to film the movie, and then they all kind of quarantining or isolating together throughout the run of production and kind of working through filming the movie or the show for that entire time period, with of course no contact with like outside individuals to limit the risk of exposure to the actual virus. How does that sound to you?
it makes sense. We have to protect each other. We have to protect ourselves. We have to protect the people in production. I know a couple of big major movie studios like Batman. I've found out that the way they're doing it for their cast, like the big when they had the big scenes, so the extras. I don't like calling actors extras, but that's the term. Extras. They will have them in a bus, one of the coach buses, do social distancing, but also have like a bubble. Like they will have like a plastic on the around the seats. They can't talk to. Well, maybe they can talk to each other, but some of them are saying they don't talk to each other because like you're already isolated. So it's like you don't. People probably want to be to themselves. Probably want to like just be isolated. I know Tyler Perry had his actors on his studio because he had like I think apartments or like stay homes for them. So every time they did their scenes, if they're done for the day, that actor would go back home, would go back to the set, to the studio home, and be there quarantine. So if they're done for that whole like period of shooting the whole episode, they will stay there for the 14 days before leaving. So I think, like I said, like you said, also like we both agree, it's something that needs to be enforced. It has to be like a law so that people are not getting sick. Because at the end of the day, when we're as actors, directors, creators, when we're done with our project, we go back home to our families. So that's the number for me. For me, if I had a family, that would be my number one priority. Like just making sure like I quarantine and this. If they have the if I was working with Tyler Perry, I would quarantine in this studio home. Or if it wasn't Tyler Perry, I'll just get a hotel that's close by and quarantine. I'm quarantined there for 14 days, which I would be kind of sad because I wouldn't be around my family if I had a family. But anyway, that's another question, another story for another day. But anyway, I'm done.
Another story for another day. No, yeah, I think it was interesting when I read that. I was just like, oh, wow. And so it's interesting to hear, or at least it's encouraging to hear that those things are already happening. It made me think of like ethical issues, though, when it comes to like having to be lonely for so long, potential cheating amongst cast members. Not to say that, everyone in Hollywood is a dog, but like, let's be honest, like we like people have urges, people have things, and so it's just like, there are some concerns with it, but overall I think it could it definitely meets the purpose in terms of contributing to the bigger picture.
I think what do you when the question when you say that, are you thinking that the actors are sharing a room together or sharing a space together?
Well, they are sharing a space, right? If they're isolating together, not to necessarily say that they are in the same room, but they have access to each other
Yeah,
through their rooms. And they both know that they're negative for corona. So it's like,
yeah,
what,
yeah,
like, where's the risk, so to speak, right?
yeah,
Don't
yeah.
want to encourage that. If there's any actor listening out there, please be faithful to whatever relationship that you're in. But there was, there are just some, and also aside from
If
like
it
the
has,
whole relationship
yeah,
thing, just the idea of loneliness being there, like not being able to access your friends and family in the way that you would like, or in the way that you're used to if you're an experienced actor. It's got to be like another hurdle to jump.
I do agree with what you're saying. And this pandemic was hard for a lot of people, and I think it was hard for a lot of people when it came to not doing something to not going out of your house and doing something active or something that will like let you be free. Like for me, acting. Like I'm a worker. Like if I'm not acting, I'm doing my 9 to 5. So it was very, very kind of like I felt like I was in like in a cage for the first month and the first month and a half, trying to figure out what I can do other than working out and getting up, showering, eating, going back to sleep, watching nothing but YouTube videos and anime. Is you have to find something that's gonna help you mentally. If it means FaceTiming your kids, your wife, every time you have a break, when you have a break, when you're done, do that. Find something.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think you said that you articulated that very well. The pandemic overall was just hard. It was hard for everyone. Um, and addition to protecting yourself physically, you also have to be able to make sure that you're protecting yourself mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So, and that's a job for all of us, you know, in the film industry or not. So, yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that point. And that was the last of my questions. So, thank you again, Robert, for joining me. I really appreciate you giving us some insight on how it's been for you.
Thank you so much for having me and the opportunity to speak with you.
So, for anyone who's interested in connecting or following Robert on his future projects, be sure to connect with him on Instagram at Robert Barnes Jr. That's RobertBarnesJr. I'm sure he'd be loved to get in contact with any of his fans out there. But besides the point, he does have some really exciting projects that he's working on. So I would encourage you guys to check those out. And that is it for today, crew. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to share this episode with your friends so that they can join the crew. And find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, and Anchor. Connect with us on Instagram at _colored_in, and be sure to leave us your thoughts. I'm excited to hear from you guys and can't wait to speak with you soon.